This is our Google Hangout assignment and YouTube broadcast on transcultural nursing, and we're going to talk about a culture, the Philippines, correct?
Correct.
All right. So, like we talked about before, we both have worked with people from the Philippines before and have cared for people from the Philippines before. And I know I found it interesting reading about the nurses in the book because I've seen what they're talking about, but I don't necessarily agree with everything that they were talking about. So have you worked with nurses from the Philippines directly?
You know, being from South Carolina and really only living here, except, when I was younger, I did live in Hong Kong actually for a year and went to third grade there. And we actually had what we called an ama, and that is a Philippine lady that comes and she, provided care, babysitting to my brother and I, lived with us, did all the cooking and the cleaning. And so that's, the most, the best example I guess I can give about my experience with the Philippines. In South Carolina, and I live in
The
a
Boonies?
rural part, a rural part of the state. And the hospital where I work is in Camden, South Carolina, and we're a small community hospital. And we do not have any nurses from the Philippines that work with us. But I do recall several years back when there was a big movement where many nurses were coming over from the Philippines to find work here. And so I found that interesting, to hear Lininger's feedback on them coming because they wanted to do it. Number one, to enhance their education. Number two was to make money to send back home to their families that were staying in the Philippines.
And they still do that. I mean, I lived in Fort Lauderdale like 20 years ago when it was, moving the Philippines nurses here was a big thing at that point. Mm. And I did see a lot of what they talked about with the cliques and, staying in their own little language and talking and that sort of stuff did cause trouble on the department. I don't remember them not being assertive, though. I remember them being very wanting to please, but I don't remember them not being assertive like the Anglo nurses are. I think that they were all very willing to stick up for what they felt was right. But I always thought that they were very good nurses. I think they have a year more education, 5 years than our 4. And they're always very, very good nurses and wanted to do the right thing. But there definitely were issues. Excuse me. And distrust.
Do you think that where the Philippines, where you saw them become more assertive and maybe less meek and mild, do you think that was something that they learned and felt like they had to do?
Possibly. And now the people that I work with, probably a third of my department now is from the Philippines. They're pretty. Wow. They've been here for a long time. They're not new people, but they've been here for a very long time, and they're all very educated people, and they're very assertive. Let me tell you. But when they talk, in fact, I'm going to do my paper on the Philippines because when they talk about family, it's very important that they care for each other. And in fact, one lady's mother just went back to the Philippines after being here for a year to take care of her young child, because that's part of what their culture does is grandma comes and takes care of the kids so mom can do her thing. Anyway.
Do you see in your organization a lot of patients from the Philippines?
I would say not as many as staff from the Philippines, as nurses from the Philippines. But it's Florida's a pretty good melting pot, stirring pot, I guess, not necessarily melting pot, but there's a good amount of a lot of different cultures here. And so that's kind of cool. That's one of the things I didn't really like about South Carolina when I lived there, is because it was, 45% one, 45% of the other, and then 10% of everybody else.
That's right.
So, but
One of the things that I'm enjoying this book and I'm learning a lot in this course, but it is pretty dated.
I agree. That's one of the things I'm going to put in my comments.
Yeah, from 2002, even just from the publication of the book, but then the studies that Leninger did, if I'm saying her name right, with the Philippine American culture was, even quite older than that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to have read this chapter, Martha, and then to hear your experience working side by side,
Mm-hmm.
along with Philippines today, to see how maybe some of that dynamic has changed.
Yeah, that is my big comment about the book. And even in reading, I think it was the girl, maybe it was the Taiwan or the Chinese chapter. I think it might have been the Oriental girl. Some of the things that they talk about in interaction of different people, it's actually before the internet became really big.
Oh, well, that's
right. So there's just been so many changes that have happened since then that I think would impact some of what she was saying, based on the ways of communication and things like that. So I do agree that the book is kind of dated and probably needs to be updated. I don't know if Leininger's out there, Leininger, whatever, is just so.
Well, it's very interesting. I enjoyed reading the chapter. It was interesting to read specifically about some of their folk health beliefs. Eating the chicken soup to stimulate breast milk, and trying to avoid those dark-skinned fruits during pregnancies, things like that.
Yeah, I thought that was weird. I never heard that one before.
Yeah. It was interesting.
But they're definitely, food is huge. In fact, one of the girls from the Philippines always brings food every night and kind of feeds the other. I mean, there's actually two of them. They all work nights, and there's two of them together that, when Jamie and Pam are working, you eat pretty well because they bring some of the food from excuse me, from their own culture.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I've had this bug and it's just
no problem. So it's interesting that you bring up the fact about them wanting to provide a meal and do things out of service. And one of the things that was interesting to me in this chapter is how they
sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm gonna get a Halls real quick. It's right here.
Sure.
You can keep talking now.
All right. So how they, enjoy doing for others, but really would appreciate not having that immediate response of thanks and return of gratitude, officially or with something tangible.
Right.
Which is, I mean, for me as what they would describe as Anglo-American, my upbringing and culture was if somebody does something nice for you, you need to reciprocate that, or if somebody loans money, pay it back quickly, that kind of thing.
Right.
So as the ladies are bringing the meals in, do you see that where, they do it because it's just something out of sheer joy and they really have no expectation of anything in return?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't want to say that they're kind of building up UOMIs. It's just what they do. And but if they get in a situation where, say, they're sick and their family member is sick, then they would hope that at that point, that with them having a need, that you would take care of them as well. Not necessarily reciprocate, but feel it in your heart to take care of them as well. So
very good.
What else? Oops, I lost you.
Can you Hear me?
I
See me?
lost. I can see you, but I lost.